Well, a jolly hello to you everyone, and welcome back at Taroko Double O Railways with me, Elizabeth. And today we are going to look at a special loco, and that is the ROD steam locomotive, and that is in the J36 class, and obviously it is a 2F steam locomotive by Hornby. So looking at the Hornby ROD J36 class, DCC ready double O gauge by Hornby, and the model code is R3735 and the radius indication is 438 millimeters. And the running number description on the locomotive is ROD number 5662. And before we continue, this is quite a interesting color in the livery that this loco has been finished in. It was all part of the alterational colors, unlined, olive, drab, or khaki brown. And Hornby accurately represents the plain functional appearance during their ROD service. Having a look at the box, we see the notable Hornby trays, and that is obviously the sleeve packaging with the ice packaging protection, as well as the locomotive laid out on the photo in the front of the box. And we also have the side indication with the description of the locomotive by Hornby and the Hornby model number, as well as the rear of the box stating a brief history of the loco and also the figure set out there. So just a side description here, it's Hornby DCC ready and model code R3735, and that's the ROD J36 class number 5662 in double O gauge. So as usual, you will find the maintenance pamphlet and also the little bag with accessories, and also featuring a snowplow. A little bit of weight, and it really feels like a pocket rocket, so let's see if it's going to run like a pocket rocket. But just before we get there, let's just have a look at the die-cast body and look at the top boiler. It's all part of the mold, lovely finish, and also the dome is nicely depicted. And very interesting, the safety valve assembly is also round on this specific loco, unlike other models that is more featuring a more square rectangular shape, and much nicer finished off on this loco, if I have to say, giving the fact of other misrepresentations of how the finishes were done on those other locos, and glue errors and whistles and safety valves missing, things like that. Luckily we don't have those issues on this loco yet. And looking at the front, we have the front buffer beam and painted in red, and yes, sprung buffers, the buffer housing painted in black, with also a nice finish to it. And unlike other models, there are no number or class painted on the buffer beam, and a pure red buffer beam is also just nice. And also the lamp irons fitted to the running plate, and then moving over to the smoke box door, the extra handrails and the firebox door handle and lamp bracket fitted there, nicely depicted. And then also the top, we're looking at the whistle separately fitted, and also moving over to the cab windows, we can see that they are glazed, and there are also handrails on the side of the cab, and there's a topple molding on the cab roof, and that's also a great finish comparing to the J19s and the other locos that's similar. That's great finish to the logo for sure. And on some of the models, they feature a pre-fitted cab door, and I did not see this on this specific logo, but we also have the hingeable plate, which is the tender foreplay. Moving over to the cab, we can see a wealth of finishes and very nicely depicted indeed. We also have the gauges finished and painted and dials and separately fitted parts galore. And before we're moving on to the tender, let's just have a look at the side of the logo again. So we see the bottom builder's plate on the other side of the metal splasher, and we also have the reverse rod and made of metal and colored to suit the logo for sure, not in a boring black. And again, we have the valve gear nicely depicted between the boiler and the frame, which is painted in red, and that's also a great finish to the logo. Looking at the bottom of the logo, we can see fine coupling rods, brake blocks and sanding pipes, and separately fitted pipework all along the logo, and lovely riveting. Also visible in the front is the side valves, as previously stated, made of plastic and painted in copper color. Moving to the tender, we can see it's very beautiful, and comparing the tenders of the J15 and subtle differences between the J15 and J36 here. We can see the valve casing as in the J36, but no valve casing in the J15, and also the dome is much higher in the J15 and lower in the J36. Some interesting changes on the tender as well. Sticking to the bottom of the logo, we see the wheels are nicely painted out to suit and match the logo, and a great painting job definitely in this color. While other types of the locomotives, such as the Halden Class 52, may have been painted in a desert sand livery for other applications, the J36 class, the logo we have here on the layout today, specifically were the khaki coloration during its military service, and often referred to as the olive drab color. And looking at the black underframe with the paintwork and all the coal load is removable on the tender and nicely detailed. The coal guard goes around the top of the tender, lovely depicted as well. And the back of the tender, we'll see the buffer beam, and of course sprung buffers again, and the NEM pocket. And must add, whilst the running the logo in, this part came off. I have no idea what it is, but I think it is the base keeper plate, which comes in the front of the NEM pocket of the logo. So again, for such a small little logo, there's a lot of detail and pretty acceptable for this logo, but we do feel there must have been some other upgrades, like a firebox, glowing firebox for instance, or at least some extra details in the bag, maybe some logo staff like drivers or something. But yeah, we can only hope for the future that we might have some painted crew in the new logos that's been launched by Hornby. must say, on the performance side, I really love the performance on this loco. It did not once drop me on the layout, in the sidings even, and I think it's because it has 6 pickups, and considering the fact that it's still using the old fashioned drawbar and the old style, and I think it is a 5-pole motor, so not 1 but 2 flywheels here, so it's perfect for freight. And I think it is a 21 pin DCC setup, and the DCC will be done in the tender as usual. And now we get to the favorite part of the episode, where we jump into the history of the J36. The NBR C class, or LNER J36 class, the loco we have here on the layout today, is a class of 060 steam locomotives. During the First World War, 25 C-class locomotives were sent to France to operate under the Railway Operating Division, the ROD. Upon their return to Scotland, they were given battle names of commanders and even certain characters, and characters like Old Bill. But however, our locomotive here today on Turoko 00 Railways is none other than the most famous Birdwood locomotive. Even we have the loco in the finish of the wartime when it was used, and not as in bearing the name Birdwood as upon return. Nevertheless, this is definitely the Birdwood locomotive, and the locomotive we have here on the layout represent in its final days. Birdwood was given, and in remembrance of the real person, a Field Marshal Sir William Riddell Birdwood, 1st Baron Birdwood. He was a distinguished British Indian Army officer who commanded the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps during the Gallipoli campaign and on the Western Front during the World War I. And he was affectionately known as Birdie by the troops. And the Lord Birdwood, coincidentally born on the same day as me, on the 13th of September, but yes, he was born in 1865. Birdwood served in the Second Boer War, whilst began in 1899, and 8 years after the arrival of my great-grandfather to South Africa, Frederick George John Lyons, and his family, the Jenningses. The confusion and everything that's happening in the world today, I guess people are moving around and trying to find better futures for them and their loved ones and their children's future. But getting back to Birdwood, he received a brevet promotion to Lieutenant Colonel in the South African Honours List published in 26 June 1902. He retired in the 1920s and passed away in 1951. In 1887, Matthew Holmes, locomotive superintendent of the North British Railways, decided to replace previous Drummond locomotives with a new design using a standard boiler. The first 6 NBR Class C locomotives were introduced in 1888, and such was their success that by 1900, 168 locomotives had been built. When W.P. Reed replaced Holmes as locomotive superintendent, he began a rebuilding program of the company's locomotives, the first Class C being rebuilt in August 1913, and by grouping, 160 had been rebuilt, the final 8 being completed under the LNER. 25 of the early rebuilds were sent to France for operation by the Railway Operating Division, hence lettering ROD, of the Royal Engineers of the Western Front in 1917, returning in 1919 and receiving attribute names from the NBR. Suitable for passenger traffic and other mainline or branch line services, as well as on goods services. The class worked across the NBR's region in Scotland and on the Highland Railways, as well as the LNER region. Working from Bladon and North Yorkshire, 123 locomotives survived into British Rail service in 1948, with 6 of the class surviving in Scotland up to 1966. The final 2 were withdrawn in 1967, and 1 locomotive, number 673, called Maud, survived into preservation. Built in colours in November 1891, the NBR number 662, the loco we have here on the layout, was rebuilt in May 1915 and was one of the 25 Class C locomotives requisitioned by the Railway Executive on 4th of August 1917 for use by the Railway Operating Division of the Royal Engineers. Sent to the Western Front on 7 November 1917, it is thought that ROD5662, the locomotive we have here on the layout today, worked around Vergenel in the Pas des Salles, proving reliable in the ROD service. Returning on 12 April 1919 to the UK, the NBR 662 was named Birdwood. The ROD J36 class locomotive was painted in a plain khaki or olive drab livery, sometimes referred to as desert sand color, but I assure you this is not the color. Correct color is khaki or olive drab. The locomotive we have here on the layout today, number 5662, under ROD. This was done whilst the locomotive served with the Railway Operation Division ROD during the World War I. This colour was standard military application for equipment sent to the Western Front in France, La Française, and often referred to as the khaki brown also in the different alterational colours. The olive drab, unlined and khaki brown served as camouflage in a European theatre of war. 25 of the J36s were sent to NBR in 1917 to assist France in aid of the war effort. And there you have it. Overall, a lovely history addition to my layout. And for me being of South Africa and the South African history of this loco, it definitely did appeal to me. And that is the reason for me purchasing this loco for myself. A lovely Christmas gift to myself. As always, best regards, Elizabeth.